Wisdom, used 234 times in 222 verses of the Bible. The skill of understanding the reality of the world and the spirits that drive it.
He was promoted because he did a good job, and it almost killed him. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Rod Hember.
And I'm Janice.
You are watching and listening to Quick Study, a program designed to take you through the Bible in 1 year. On today's program, we are in the book of Daniel, focusing on Daniel chapter 6. Again, I've isolated one chapter to our reading today, which I've called Deadly Promotions. How can you deal with persecution in the marketplace? Persecution, in fact, in your own workplace or in your own home. We'll talk about that and more coming up in just a moment. Corey is also here with Bible archaeology and history.
Both of our studies today are centered around the city of Babylon.
The city of Babylon, of course, in Akkadian means the gate of the gods in ancient Akkadian. In Hebrew, it means confusion. So it's really, the Bible's a tale of two cities, Babylon being the rebellious one. Anyway, interesting. All right, we'll talk about it later. Do you know?
Yes. Do you know how many satraps Daniel was placed over as an administrator in Darius's kingdom?
A word that I am working on changing my pronunciation from all my life. After 50 years or more, here I am saying it's satraps. Should be satraps. That and more coming up. Stay there as we continue.
No study of the ancient biblical book of Daniel is complete without studying the actual physical city of Babylon, as that's where much of the book of Daniel actually took place. This is where Daniel was an exile and an official in the government. The Babylon featured in the Bible and dominant during the days of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel is known today as the Neo-Babylonian Empire. After years under Assyrian control, Babylon had broken free and defeated Assyria by teaming with the Median Empire. Famous King Nebuchadnezzar, while he was still Prince Nebuchadnezzar, had married the Median princess. After much warfare, Nebuchadnezzar, who became king when his father died during their campaigns, returned to his capital city, Babylon, and there he began more aggressive campaigns. This time, they were constructive. Nebuchadnezzar built his palace, many buildings, strengthened the walls, and built one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Legend has it that Nebuchadnezzar built the gardens as a present for his Median queen, Amytis. Ancient historian Herodotus visited the city about 100 years later, still raving about its beauty and impressive construction. The city straddled the Euphrates River and boasted an 11-mile-long outer wall with 8 fortified, decorated gates. The most famous is the Ishtar Gate. Its remains were removed and today are displayed in Germany. Nebuchadnezzar used fire-baked bricks to build Babylon. These lasted longer and held up to water damage. What made Nebuchadnezzar's bricks unique is that he also had his name stamped into them. It's interesting that the book of Daniel may allude to these practices. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into a massive furnace, probably one of the kilns used to make these bricks. Daniel also records Nebuchadnezzar's ancient boasts, and those are paralleled in the practice of stamping his name into every building, literally building the city on his own name.
It's time to explore the wise guys of the Bible. Daniel is one of them. Today, Daniel 6. Business injustice turns deadly when the good, wise guy Daniel, God's prophet, is too good at what he does. He inspired powerful kings to trust him with their entire kingdoms. Daniel's self-discipline and remarkable character earned him high and trusted positions with world leaders not of his race. Darius was one of them. But Darius's colleagues couldn't stand him, that is Daniel, because of his excellence in character. Unwise men always try to destroy the wise because they must demolish someone else to build themselves up. But Daniel 6 tells us of a just God who stays the mouths of lions, closes them, to protect his prophets' outstanding service to the king.
Daniel 6, 1 through 13. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault, because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, "We shall not find any charge against this Daniel, unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So these governors and satraps thronged before the king, and said thus to him, "King Darius, live forever." All the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and satraps, the counselors and advisers, have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree, that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing, so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. Therefore King Darius signed the written decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home, and in his upper room, with his windows open toward Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day, and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. "Have you not signed a decree that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" The king answered and said, "The thing is true according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter." So they answered and said before the king, "That Daniel, who is one of the captives from Judah, does not show due regard for you, O king, or for the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day." Daniel chapter 6, verses 1 through 13.
This is Quick Study, and we are studying today the book of Daniel. Over the weekend, if you have listened or watched us, you know that we introduced this amazing and stunning book. Daniel, of course, one of my favorite prophets. I have, of course, 4 major favorite prophets and 12 minor favorite prophets of the Bible. And today we're looking at Daniel. And it's the time of the Persian Empire that really basically took over Babylon in one night in 539 BC. It's Daniel chapter 6 that we read and we're going to read. Now, Daniel is a faithful prophet to God. If you watch this program much, I have a tendency to create words. When I talked about the Dead Sea, I created the word debtor and debtor. There's no such word. I also create a word called trendency. It's a trend and a tendency mixed together. God's prophets, good prophets, real prophets, have a trendency to be faithful no matter what. And Daniel is. Here is Daniel chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. We're looking at his tendencies of excellence. Here it is. It pleased Darius, the Persian king, to set the kingdom, over the kingdom, 120 satraps, to be over the whole kingdom. Verse 2. And over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one. And the satrap might give account to them so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and the satraps because, what does it say? An excellent spirit was in him. And the king gave thought to setting the whole realm over him. So the governors and the satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom. But they could find no charge or fault because he was faithful. Nor was there any error or fault found in him. What a drag. These people were trying to find, like the media today, like the wild media, the paparazzi. They wanted to find some deep, dark, dirty little secret to destroy somebody and broadcast it to the world. They couldn't find any. Beloved, let me tell you that we are truly promoted when we choose to let the Holy Spirit of God change our character and discipline our lust. There's one thing that you can do to protect yourself from identity theft, and that is to make yourself faithful to God and allow the blood of Christ and the Holy Spirit of God to keep your character straight. God protects those even in unseen ways. I promise you. Just trust me on that. Look at Daniel chapter 6, verse 5. Then these men said, we shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning his devotion to God, the law of his God. So they're going to go after his religion. So these governors and the satraps thronged before the king, and they said thus to him, King Darius, live forever. All the governors of the kingdom and the administrators and the satrap and the counselors and the advisors have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish a decree and sign it in writing so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which it does not alter. Therefore, King Darius signed the written decree. Here's the point. When we are promoted by God, jealous, evil, demonic spirits seek to destroy us. Expect resistance. But listen, wait for it. Expect resistance, but remember, resistance is futile. That's for all you Star Trek fans. Resistance is futile against God. This is amazing. Now watch what happens. I want to get to this because it says in verse 10, now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home. And in his upper room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times a day, and he prayed and gave thanks before his God, and as was his custom since the early days. His devotion to God showing here. Then these men assembled, and they found Daniel praying and in supplication before his God. They sneaked in to see him through his window, and they went before the king, spoke concerning the king's decree. Have you not signed a decree, king, that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? Well, the king answered, yes, the thing is true according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. So they answered and said before the king, that Daniel, who you like so much, who is one of the captives of Judah, does not show you due regard, O king, or the decree that you have made, but he makes his petition 3 times a day against his God, or against you for his God. Now, the king was not happy about this because he got caught in his own law. And they think what they're going to do is wipe out Daniel. They're going to take him out because he's going to be fed to the lions. They put Daniel into the lion's den. And you know what God did? He said to the lions, "Here, kitty, kitty, kitty." And the lions were looking at God and they said, "Shut your mouth. You don't touch this man. He's my prophet." So those hungry lions stayed there all night and they fasted all night because they weren't going to have Daniel food. They're going to have food the next day. That were the guys who set him up. So, beloved, you see, here's the point. When we are promoted by God, evil men and women, they will attack us for our faith in God. But we must not waver. Because why? Resistance against God and his character is futile. God is the most powerful entity ever was, ever will be, anywhere in this universe and any other verse. And beloved, when we are faithful to God, I don't care who's thieving anybody's identity, God will protect you.
Daniel chapter 6 contains the famous history of Daniel in the lion's den. But this episode doesn't happen until after Persia defeats the Babylonian Empire. So right now, you and I are going to look at this downfall of Babylon. The fall of the Neo-Babylonian Empire to Persia was as significant as it was dramatic. This changing of world powers had happened before, but perhaps never as well documented. The biblical book of Daniel, Greek historians Herodotus and Xenophon, and the records of Cyrus the Great, they all recount the events of the taking of the city of Babylon. The empire had been weakened by a chaotic succession of kings, leading up to its final king Nabonidus, who preferred to let his son Belshazzar rule in the capital. Herodotus and Xenophon both tell us that Belshazzar had been stockpiling provisions in the city of Babylon, just in case this new, frighteningly motivated King Cyrus of Persia decided to try and overthrow Babylon. Around 540, Cyrus did begin his attacks. After a major loss by Babylon, they shut themselves up in their magnificent city, perfectly prepared for the siege of a lifetime. The Euphrates River traveled right through the city, too deep to traverse by any enemies, and guarded well by a series of walls and bronze gates. And they had stockpiled enough food to last years. Naturally, the only thing they could do was throw a party. Daniel 5 gives us an insider's view to Belshazzar's drunken revelry that Herodotus and Xenophon both verify. Cyrus and his army had dealt with rivers before, though. They dug trenches along the Euphrates, connecting it to marshes, while their best fighters were sent down to wait by the river entrance into the city. By cover of night and drunken festival, the order was given to open the trenches. Water was diverted away, and the Euphrates became fordable. The soldiers snuck in unnoticed and took the city. Nabonidus was taken captive without a fight, but the second-ranked ruler of Babylon, Belshazzar, was killed.
In the month of September, Quick Study TV offers unique and inspiring Bible commentary on the 12 minor prophets and the 4 major prophets in the Bible. The late Dr. Ron Hembry brings us closer to the world in which they ministered, revealing amazing unknown facts about the truth of their prophecies and how they affect us today. Now, all of this commentary and more are offered in audio MP3 format this month on an exclusive, beautiful USB key drive. It fits into your computer, your carport, even CD players with USB supports. You can save the files to your computer, copy them to your MP3 player, iPod, iPad, or iPhone. And this beautiful key drive featuring the audio teaching of Dr. Ron Hembry on the prophets is our special gift to you this month for a suggested donation of $25 or more. When you participate in giving to Quick Study Television, you're keeping us broadcasting.
So all donations are used for the production of Quick Study TV and the Bible Guide and many other teaching tools. Thank you in advance for your much-needed gift. To send to P.O. Box 150, Murraysville, Pennsylvania, 156680150. The phone number is 724-733-8336. In Canada and the rest of the world, send to P.O. Box 456, Orangeville, Ontario, L9W5G2. And our phone number is 519-940-8338.
You're watching Quick Study. You're listening to Quick Study. Thank you for listening and watching. Janice, Corey's going to answer this question in a minute, but sometimes there are words that you learn in Sunday school. I did anyway. And I never was able, I learned them a certain way, burned, seared into my brain. And there were two of them that always were a trouble for me whenever I read them for most of my life, read them wrong. One was, I used to call Mordecai in Esther, Mordecai.
Right.
And the other one was Saratraps. But it's satraps.
That's right.
Not Saratraps.
That's right.
It's an ancient Persian position of authority. All right, so this relates to the question today.
Yes, it does.
Which is?
Which is this. Do you know how many satraps Daniel was placed over as an administrator in Darius's kingdom?
All right, so this is Darius's kingdom. This is the ancient Persian kingdom. So, Corey, how many do you think there were? Actually, it created a great deal of difficulty for Daniel because they were jealous of him. Others were jealous of him. But go ahead.
Okay, well, I can't remember the exact place in Scripture in the book of Daniel where it talks about, but I know that the empire of Persia was taken into 127 provinces. It was separated out. And I know that there was a satrap per province. So that's my logic. I'm going to say 127.
You're close. And your logic is good. However, even with your dad's hand signals,
I know, it was confusing me. I was having a hard time answering. I'm trying to, he's right here, and I'm trying to not glance over.
Sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty. 120.
Okay.
Actually, 120 satraps. Now, here's a bonus side to the question, How many other administrators besides Daniel were placed over those 120?
The ones who got jealous of him?
Well, they were all jealous of him, but there were how many others besides Daniel that were placed over the 120 satraps?
Do you know, Corey?
I don't. I would guess 3, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not going to get involved on this one, folks. I've already messed up myself.
Which must mean that he's not sure of the
Well,
answer.
no,
I think
that's
so.
not
That
necessarily the case.
Corey's actually right. 3 in total, including Daniel, were placed over the 120 satraps. And who did King Darius want over everyone?
That's what got him in trouble. Daniel.
And who is he?
Daniel.
That's right.
What a great guy.
That's exactly right. King Darius, because of Daniel's excellence.
Belshazzar, actually, is what they call him in Babylon. But yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Because of David's excellence, the king actually wanted him to be appointed and leader over all of them, which caused a bit of a sore spot.
Because he would have been over them, and they didn't like that.
They did not like that.
And so they said, you know what? We know he prays to his God, so let's trap him. And so they made it illegal to pray.
Yes.
And so, so it was illegal to pray in a public spot.
For 30 days.
That sound kind of familiar? Anyway, and so he went to his room.
They knew that Daniel did this. This was something that he did every day, 3 times a day.
So he went to his room, they caught him, and they arrested him.
Brought him to the king.
And they tried to feed him to the lions.
They did indeed.
But the lions were not hungry. They were not hungry, and that's a beautiful story. Anyway, that's an amazing story.
The king was trapped, and he knew that.
In his own law. He was trapped in his own politics. He was happy when he went remember the morning he came down there and he said, Daniel, are you still alive? And Daniel said, of course. And he said, your God has saved you. And then those guys that set him up, they became cat food. Anyway.
Not a good ending for them.
Not a good ending for them. So don't, try to mess with God's people. All right, briefly, I just need to tell you that we need your help. This is the inside of the Bible guide. It comes every month, and as we go through the Bible, there are 12 of them. What we do is we divide the Bible up into 12 reading patterns, and then what we do each month is we highlight them in this, and it comes with our Bible Discovery Letter. However, we are mentioning to you in the month of September that if you would like all 12 books up to this point, and want to get a whole set for the end of the year, make a special offering and do it today. By the way, we are supported by monthly partners, and this really is our bread and butter. You can support at $10 a month, $25 a month, $50 a month, or really important, you can prayer support and ask God what He would have you do and do that. Quickly, our address is P.O. Box 150, Murraysville, Pennsylvania, 15668-0150. In Canada, P.O. Box 456, Orangeville, Ontario, L9W5G2. Social injustice and transgression is prominent right now in North America. People of faith are frequently mocked and discriminated against in our present Western world. Daniel also faced deep social and spiritual discrimination, even though he had positions of power and purpose. The devil did not want Daniel to pray because his prayers were powerful. God's wisdom is at work in us when we recognize that prayer is the very tool that will help us overcome discrimination. No matter how believers are persecuted, biblical prayer will close the mouth of the lions. With that we pray, Lord, teach me the daily discipline of prayer. In our Wise Up segment on Quick Study, we study the book of Proverbs. Today we are looking at Proverbs chapter 19, verse 14. Here is what it says. Laziness brings on deep sleep, and the shiftless go hungry. Interesting. It says here that work is good. It says here that it is important for us to make a living and to earn our keep. And that's a biblical principle. But today you may be struggling in an economy that's broken, in a world that has no biblical principles involved in our modern societies in the West especially. But may I say to you today that God is for you. And if you come to Christ and give your life to Him and begin to reposition your life towards the purpose that He's called you to do, then you will be provided for. God always provides for those who follow Him. He never has a follower who is not provided for. Now, it may be provided your needs for, but not your preference. He may give you food and not a Ferrari. That's okay. He always supplies your needs. Come to Christ today, give your life to Him, reorder your life according to Him. He will help you. Thank you for joining us today on Quick Study. Remember, you can get the full impact of this ministry by going to BibleDiscoveryTV.com. That's BibleDiscoveryTV.com.